All right, we're back. Maybe. There we go. All right. Let me bring this down. I think you can probably hear me just fine with it down here. All right, so apologies for having to pause the live stream if you even cared. Got a phone call there, but we're back. So I was just about to get into some updates for Curious About Cannabis. So let's do that. So let me knock some little notifications and things out of here. So let me figure out how to share my screen. Let's see. Okay. Sorry, this is taking forever. Almost got it here. Let's see. All right. So the first big thing that we have coming up with Curious About Cannabis, as you might have seen, I made a video about it on the channel a while back, right before we really got going. But the Curious About Cannabis Masterclass is coming up in March. This is, I used to teach a bunch of workshops that were kind of smaller and broken up all throughout the year. And over time, I've experimented with different ways of teaching these workshops. And what I've kind of come to realize is that these are really better combined and done over a longer period of time. So last year was the first time we did one class for the whole year, and it was 4 months long. And then this year we're doing it again, extending it a little more to 6 months. So it's become an annual event, and it's something that I look forward to every year. It's fun to get to reconnect with a lot of my colleagues and friends and people I've interviewed, to get them to come back and talk to our students and participate in our classes. So it's a really cool experience. And the master class is really where Curious About Cannabis as a brand started, because back in 2013 and 14, I started putting together a curriculum for what I envisioned as like a really awesome cannabis science college class, like an introductory, cannabis science survey class. And that led to me teaching what would eventually become what was called the intermediate workshop, and then the advanced workshop, and then those got combined into the ultimate workshop, which then got renamed the master class later. But in teaching those workshops, I, was looking for textbooks and things to use and couldn't find a good survey text that went over pretty much, every primary aspect of cannabis and cannabinoid science. And so I started to write what I thought would be an ideal textbook for the class. And it started out with me writing these, what would kind of be like blog posts, and combining them in a Word document and sending them to Staples to get printed and bound, and giving them to my students. And then eventually in 2018, we published the first edition of the book, discovered a million problems, formatting errors, and just a lot of things that drove me crazy. So we then made a second edition, released that in 2020. And I still wasn't quite satisfied with that. And so then in last year, in 2022, at the very end of the year, we published the third edition of the book, which is really more of what I wanted and expected from the first edition. It's big. It's over 500 pages. I think it's exactly 550 pages. It is an awesome book, and I'm really proud of it, really excited about it. So all of these things are connected. The book is connected to these classes. The podcast I started doing as a spinoff after writing the first edition of the book. all of the things that I do with Curious About Cannabis are connected to the past and kind of where we've come from. So that's all to say the masterclass is a very special event. I think it's very unique. Every student I've had that's gone through it has said that it's very unique, even compared to other classes that they've taken. So I encourage you to look into it. We have scholarships available for folks that, where the registration fees are impossible to meet. We also have payment plans with no credit checks or anything needed. They're just default payment plans for 3, 6, and 12 months, so that if you just need to kind of tackle the registration fee in little chunks, then you can do that. I'm really trying to make it as accessible as possible. I'm also going to be launching a program next week where for every person that signs up for the class going forward, I'm going to gift a scholarship. And this is primarily because I've gotten a lot of scholarship applications for this class, particularly for this year. And these applications are from really interesting, passionate people from all over the world. And I want to learn with them. I want to have them in the class and give them this experience. And so I've been trying to figure out how to do that. It's challenging on a number of levels. It's expensive to ship all of the course materials internationally. But I have a plan. I'm going to have a special offering for some of these scholarship applications where we'll try something out where they get a digital copy of the book, they get access to the class, and all of the benefits that come with that. And we'll just forego the physical, course kits. And they'll also be connected to somebody else in the class that is attending that sort of helped fund their scholarship. So I think it'll be a nice way to sort of build community within the cohort and to help people get in the class that are interested, that I think would get a lot of value out of it. So yeah, that's a little bit of what's on the horizon. If you go to the website, like you see here, it says there's 12 spots remaining. There's actually 10 now. So those are filling up kind of fast. I do recommend, if you have any interest at all in getting in this class, I would sign up within the next 2 weeks, because I expect we will sell out. And I also expect having to try to see if there's a way to expand the class size at all. I'm very hesitant to do that. I like to keep the class sizes small, because in general, everyone learns better in smaller groups, and I like to be able to be available one-on-one for every student, and that gets to be impossible to do after a certain amount of students. So we'll see what we can do to accommodate everybody that's interested, but we do really only have about 10 spots left, and some of those will be going to scholarship recipients. So yeah, that's filling up really quickly, and we still have 2 months to go before the class starts. So if you're curious about Cannabis Masterclass, go check that out. I really recommend it. We have some amazing special guests coming in: Dr. Russo, Dr. A.D. Ray, Dr. Kirk, so many folks that you've seen on the podcast, heard on the podcast. They're all very awesome people that are passionate about sharing and learning about cannabis. So it'll be a really good time. And this selection of guests cover a lot of different disciplines. We have, Cody is a pharmacist, Matthew is an IPM specialist, Dr. Justice, a plant biologist, Dr. Russo's a neurologist, and just has been involved in a ton of cannabis research in general. Dr. Kirk is a chemist. Dr. Spellman is a molecular biologist. Dr. A.D. Ray is a neuroscientist and pharmacologist. Jonathan is a solventless hash specialist. Dr. Schwabe there's just so much here. Kyle, my good friend Kyle Boyers, an analytical technologist, knows everything there is to know about the technology used to test cannabis. Jana Champagne used to be a registered nurse, has tons of great insights into using cannabis for medical conditions, and she also has a very special story about her personal journey with cannabis, both with herself and with her daughter. So big medical focus there. Dr. Anthony Smith was one of my mentors from back in the day when we were building Canavir Research, which was the first cannabis testing lab that I was involved with. He's a molecular biologist and analytical chemist, super knowledgeable guy when it comes to medicinal plants, and just an overall positive, just good dude that I'm happy to be able to call my friend. And then who else do we have here? John, if you haven't had a chance to listen to my episode with John, go check that out. He's a really awesome guy, great personality and sense of humor, and super knowledgeable and very passionate about teaching. And so I'm very happy to be involved with him as well. So just a really incredible lineup here. And we may even add a couple more folks. We'll see. I'm starting to get kind of crazy, and I'm just inviting as many folks as I can fit in the schedule and see what we can do. So go register, get in on this very unique opportunity. There are conferences you would potentially pay a lot of money to have a chance to, learn from some of these people and meet with them and have their time. And they all have been very gracious to donate their time for this event, knowing that, really this is all about giving people access to incredible educational events that are based in reliable, science-driven information, and that also comes from experience in cannabis science. All of these people are involved when working in the space. And so, I'd love to have you in class. It's a fun time. What else do we have going on in Curious About Cannabis? I'm working on making a video about the virtual campus, if you haven't had a chance to check that out. The virtual campus is something that it's kind of a long game, something I'm developing with plans to use it like 2 years from now, more so than using it right now. It's going to be in development for a while, but the virtual campus, it's kind of like going into a video game. I mean, technically it's a metaverse. People are kind of weird about the metaverse these days. But the metaverse is just a 3-dimensional representation of a website. If you think about it, that's what a lot of video games are too. So here's a look at this platform. It's all built in a platform called Frame, which is a really great platform that I recommend for anyone wanting to dabble in this sort of development. So if you enter this page, you kind of enter this like little welcome room, or you can learn about the overall Curious About Cannabis ecosystem and everything we have going on. You can also find some cannabis science related news. You can jump into different places within the virtual campus. And we're going to jump into the Learning Center here. And let me just check and make sure we're doing okay. The live stream's holding up. Sweet. So I've got a little bit of lag on my system because I'm running so much right now trying to live stream and do all of this. So it might be a little clunky. But you move around with the WASD and arrow keys. And I don't know if you're able to hear that sound, but there is kind of a pleasant soundscape for this area. And there's a lot to explore around here. So I've got these tents over here set up that are broken down into topics, and there's different things to look at, and then courses that you can jump into if you're a member, which is free. So go to member.cacpodcast.com and go become a Curious About Cannabis member for free. You can jump into any of these courses. Here's a bunch of folks involved in the history of cannabis taxonomy, some recommended papers to read that are open access. You can literally read them right there. There's also, should I show you some secrets? Let's see. So for one thing, there's a demo dispensary that you can go in. Oh, sometimes all of this, I mean, like I said, it's still being developed. It can be a little glitchy. For some reason, it briefly displayed it, but now it doesn't seem to want to display the inside of the dispensary. And I did not build this dispensary model, by the way. All these 3D models are things that are in the Creative Commons. I think I put back here so that's who is responsible for building this. This was working earlier. I don't know why it's glitching out now, but that's why I said this thing is all in development. It's going to be a little while before we're really rolling. But go back here. Let's see. I think I threw a secret back here, didn't I? Or did I? And you can even run up in these hills. I mean, it is very much like a video game. Another thing I'm trying to figure out is why this white screen kind of shows up around all of the content here. It didn't used to do that, so I might have to play around with some settings. It kind of just like puts a bubble and things. I don't know why. I think I have something over here. Let's see. Something I wanted to show you. I don't know how many of you are Doctor Who fans, but we do have a TARDIS that's parked in here. And then for those of you applying for a scholarship, you should take note of this. Let's see, we got to get back. So one thing you can do to get around here is you can just go up here and go to Go To, and there's different places you can just jump to, like a jump to conclusions mat, if you know what that references to. Okay, so if you're applying for a scholarship, you need to find this mushroom. It's for extra points on the scholarship. I encourage you to do it. You click on it, follow the link, and you'll hopefully learn a little something. And I want you to talk about it in your scholarship application. Let me know you put forth the effort to find it. But yeah, that's just a little bit of what's in the virtual campus. These are all podcast episodes that you can literally click on. If I remember correctly, I think it will open up, so you can continue to explore, and it'll pull up the podcast episode right here. You're listening to the Curious About Cannabis podcast. We do have to figure out a way to turn off this other music. I'm trying to remember how. It's been a minute. I'll have to figure that out later. I had sound controls set up in here, and they have moved. I don't know where they are. There's some other secrets over here that might be worth checking out, like that sheep. What's up with that sheep? Can we click on that sheep? Oh yeah, we can. So yeah, I recommend poking around, listening to some episodes, try to find some Easter eggs, see what you learn. You never know, some of that stuff may come up in giveaways and whatnot. There's another news feed. Let's see. Let's go to... Excuse me, I've got some hiccups. There's a lounge area in the classroom. And then we've got this magical door. Let's go in this magical door and see where we end up here. So this is the exhibition hall, or in some places you'll see it referred to as the expo hall. I went back and forth on what to call it. But this is where I put information about our sponsors and contributors. And if you ever have free time, I recommend just kind of wandering around here just like you would in exhibition hall at a conference or something. You can learn a little bit about different companies. Natural Learning Laboratories is my company. These little zones that you see around here are voice zones, so that if there were multiple people here, we can all step into this zone and talk to each other and not bother other people. So there's cool things set up like that. So there's some of our sponsors there. And our sponsors help us in all sorts of different ways. Some of them provide products that I use in trainings and classes. Some of them provide financial support for scholarships. Some of them, like the workshop, provides terpene kits. There's all sorts of different things that our sponsors help us do. And then here's a list of our podcast contributors. So everyone that's ever appeared on the podcast is listed here, and you can learn about everybody. So yeah, this is a place to hang out, particularly if we're doing events at the virtual campus, the primary campus. This is a place where folks kind of hang out while waiting for a class to start. And, there's lots of places to kind of roam around and have private conversations and whatnot. Also, if you want to see what you look like, if you click this button, then you can see your avatar. This is what mine looks like. It's not too bad, pretty close. I couldn't get, normally I have a beard shadow, but the only beards they had were kind of thick beards, and I cannot grow thick beards, so it didn't look realistic. But one thing I want to fix here. This audio, like you hear the music, but if you walk away, it'll start to fade, so that when you're over here talking to people, it's not really bothering you too much. Go up here. There's some more lounges and things. There's also stuff to click on, like browse podcast episodes. Again, this creates a little overlay here where you can browse through all the podcast episodes by categories, which I think a lot of people don't realize you can do, and it's super handy, especially if you've caught up on newer episodes and are looking for interesting older episodes. I recommend doing that. Also, our seasonal episodes, which I haven't made one in a couple of years, but we do have 10 of them, and I'm really proud of these episodes. They're kind of NPR style, productions. And I do plan on going back and re-editing them and making new ones soon, hopefully this year. So, yeah, that's a little demo of the virtual campus. I know a lot of people sort of make fun of the idea of the metaverse and stuff like this, but when it comes to education, there are a lot of really great applications for this sort of video game style three-dimensional workspace. So I'm looking forward to playing around with it. If you take the master class, we'll be doing some activities in the virtual campus, as well as I'm going to try to organize some public events as well, just to play around with it. So yeah, go poke around. There's still a lot I have to build and things to do in here. I'm trying to find ways to help everything load faster, minimizing the file sizes, all sorts of things. So it'll be changing over time. But check it out. I look forward to seeing what you think about it. Let's see. So, need cannabis plants growing everywhere. Yeah, I know. So there's a couple of things to that. One, we've got a few kind of peppered around. Each of those 3D models takes a while to load and everything, so it slows the experience quite a bit. But I am working on a scene where all of the other 3D models are hidden and only cannabis plants show up. And so there will be an option to see cannabis plants everywhere. I also, long term, if we want to talk about, what I would like to do if I were able to find good advertisers and sponsors that could make it possible to do more interesting work. I would really, really like to get a 3D scanner and work on doing 3D scans of different types of cannabis plants, cannabis leaves, cannabis products, as well as a lot of other, in sort of my other natural products projects. I'd like to do that with all sorts of other medicinal plants, medicinal mushrooms and things. So maybe one day I'll be able to make a lot of 3D models that we can throw into the virtual campus. I do plan on trying to build like a virtual herbarium in there over time. It'll happen. It's just everything in due time. But I'm glad someone was actually watching in on that. I didn't know if anyone was actually tuning in or not. So thanks so much for hanging in there with me. Another thing I thought it'd be fun to do, just something I've never done or talked about before, and it might end up making a decent spin-off video, is I wanted to talk about some of my favorite cannabis-related movies. This isn't cannabis science related at all. It really just more ties into my past in how I got to learn about cannabis and decide to eventually try it for my own issues and things. And so I've had a long history with wrestling with cannabis, especially in a prohibitionist state where I started. So I have a few documentaries and movies that I'm particularly passionate about. So I figured I'd share them. And I'm interested to know what any of you out there think about this. So one of the best documentaries I ever saw on cannabis, and it was a later one. Let's see, it came out in 2008 or so. So there were tons of documentaries that came out that were good before this. But when this documentary came out, I was like, wow, this really, encapsulates so much of what's fascinating about the cannabis industry and why the laws around it are so messed up and everything. But anyway, The Union. So highly, highly recommend if you haven't seen this. It's dated now because cannabis is legal in so many places. This came out really before even a lot of states had medical laws. I mean, some did, obviously, but this came out in an interesting time, and it really presented the case for why people would not want cannabis to be legal, why cannabis cultivators often do not support legalization and things like that. Very thought-provoking. I really loved that movie. Another documentary that I really loved when I was in sort of my early days of getting into cannabis was Super High Me. And this is actually my autographed copy. I've been to a few of Doug Benson's shows over the years, but one of them in Portland when I was living in Oregon that I went to, I was able to get him and Graham Elwood to sign this copy. But this video, if you haven't ever watched this movie, it's a parody of Super Size Me. And Doug Benson, the comedian, who, if you're not familiar with, I expect most of you, if you're on this channel and watching this, you're probably familiar with Doug Benson. But if you're not, go check him out. But he decided to do a documentary where he stopped using cannabis for 30 days, and then he used cannabis constantly for 30 days and had a doctor measuring his vitals and all this stuff, and just talked about what it was like. And one of the big things for me about this movie is it demonstrated just how safe cannabis is, even when you take it to excessive levels. And for someone, again, who was young, living in a prohibitionist state and trying to make sense of everything, that was a big deal. And this came out in 2007. Yeah, so a very big one for me. I love, having this autographed copy. I would really, really like to interview Doug Benson one day on the podcast. I've tried to reach out to him online. I think I'm probably a little too small to get his attention, but Doug, if you ever watch this, or anyone that watches this that knows Doug, I would love to have him on the Curious About Cannabis podcast. I want to talk about cannabis and creativity and comedy, and just his overall journey, Super High Me, everything. So someone make that happen, please. Some of my other movies that are not documentaries. So one that I was fascinated by, I think it came out when I was in college. Came out in 2008. So a lot of this stuff came out 2007, 2008. But Humboldt County, I don't know how many of you are familiar with this movie. It wasn't super popular. It's a great movie, but it just wasn't super popular when it came out. This really got me wanting to travel to the West Coast and, learn more about how at that time, the black market cannabis industry worked and that sort of thing. I was fascinated by it. There are some great actors and actresses in this movie. It's a really incredible lineup. And this is just something that everyone should watch. And again, it's sort of getting dated because cannabis legalization and everything has changed so much. But that's one reason why I like these older movies. I say older, but it's 2007. It's not that old. But they give you some insight into what it was like not that long ago, and really during the time when I was growing up and developing my relationship with the plant, what the dynamics were like, and just how dangerous it was from a legal perspective and that sort of thing. But Humboldt County, really great movie. Another really great one that touches on the South, where I'm from and where I live again now, is Leaves of Grass. I absolutely love this movie for multiple reasons. I love Edward Norton, one of my favorite actors. He does a great job playing twins in this movie. One of his twin selves is a cannabis cultivator in Oklahoma, doing a large indoor cultivation operation, gets into some trouble, needs some help. And then the other brother is a philosophy professor, which I relate to on multiple levels because my first degree as an undergraduate was in philosophy. I've always been very much into philosophy. So that was really cool to me. And then the cannabis side too, it connects to all of these different parts of myself. So I love this movie. It's set in Oklahoma, so set in the South. Again, a great cast. I mean, Richard Dreyfuss is in it, Susan Sarandon, Kerry Russell, just some great folks. So definitely, if you aren't familiar with this movie, go check it out. It's pretty cool. Do the fake cannabis plants look cheesy? Yes. Get over it. Let's see, what else? So another kind of lesser known one that anyone that grew up in the 90s will probably like is this one called The Whackness. So The Whackness, another sort of movie that didn't get super popular, but it has Ben Kingsley, Mary-Kate Olsen kind of appears out of the shadows. Josh Peck is the lead. If you know from Drake and Josh and Nickelodeon, this is a serious role that he did back in, when did this come out? 2008. My gosh, all of these things came out in 2007, 2008. That's so weird. But this movie is about really two main characters. This kid who is in high school, who is growing up in New York City in the 90s, trying to figure out what to do with his life. He's selling weed to make money to try to, kind of break out of the situation that he's in. He's seeing a psychiatrist who's played by Ben Kingsley. The psychiatrist is basically going through a midlife crisis. And they sort of go through this kind of existential crisis together. The psychiatrist going through his problems, trying to raise a daughter and relate to a wife that he doesn't really have much of a connection with anymore, and trying to have this practice, And then Josh Peck's character in high school trying to figure out what comes next. How do you do college? Do you want to go to college? Why does any of this stuff matter? His parents are fighting. They're going broke and losing their house. All this stuff is happening. So they're just having, these really big, life-defining moments. So super good movie. Again, if you're a product of the 90s like I was, you'll probably particularly like this movie. Lots of great music, really good hip hop from the 90s, as well as interesting throwbacks. So I saw two different versions of this movie when it first came out, and it had two different soundtracks. And I don't know how to find the one that I originally saw, but one thing I remember is the end of the movie, the last song that plays. In one version, it's Neil Young's Out on the Weekend, which is amazing. I love that song. And then in the other version of the movie, it's Mott the Hoople's All the Young Dudes, which is also an amazing song and gives a totally different feel to the end of the movie. So anyway, the soundtrack is very good. Lots of good 90s hip-hop blended with 60s, 70s music that really represents the two main characters. So The Whackness. Check that out. Let's see. Another one of my favorite cannabis-related movies. So this one's kind of a silly one, but I like it. Tell me if you've seen it. It's called Smiley Face. So this is one that has Anna Faris in it, and also John Krasinski, which is really funny. It's a guy from The Office, one of the main characters from The Office. A lot of people do not know that he is in a weed movie, but he is, and it's hilarious. This movie's basically, Anna Faris's character is a very spacey stoner who just gets into a series of conundrums over the course of a day that end up leading her into some really crazy adventures, all because she ended up eating all of these weed cupcakes and needs to try to figure out how to replace them. Super, just really silly, fun movie, but Smiley Face. Let's see, this one came out. I feel like this one might be a little older, 2006, a little bit older. We broke free of the 2007, 2008. That was apparently 2007, 2008 was a good couple of years for weed movies. Now, probably my favorite movie that doesn't revolve around cannabis, but does have cannabis featured in it, is The Big Lebowski. This is one of my favorite movies of all time, period. If you have not seen The Big Lebowski, you must see it. Not everyone relates to it the same way that I do, but I love The Big Lebowski. The dude, of course, smokes joints throughout the movie, so that's why I included it in my list. I can't say enough good things. It's a hard movie to explain, but basically Jeff Bridges' character is named Jeffrey Lebowski. He gets mistaken for another person whose name is Jeffrey Lebowski and gets caught up in a crazy series of crimes and scams and things. And he never did anything, but all of this trouble and conflict just seems to find him and wrap him up in it as it all moves along. Really just crazy movie. Jeff Bridges, John Goodman, Steve Buscemi. Just hilarious. Although if you're not a fan of cuss words, I think The Big Lebowski is one of the movies that has the most cuss words in it that's ever come out. It may be surpassed by something else, but when it first came out, it was the movie that featured the most YouTube videos. Okay, it says we're back. I don't know how long we'll remain. Let's see. Okay. It says we're still going. Let me see if this helps at all. I'm going to go back to the small view here, just to see if it reduces some of the bandwidth issues here. Well, this might have to be the end. It seems like I'm just got a bad internet connection right now. So the only way for me to fix it is to turn off the router and turn it back on. So thanks for hanging out in this live stream, and I'll try to do another one soon. So y'all take it easy.